Check. Am I on? There we go. I love looking at those scenes in nature. They're just incredible. The views, the creatures. The sea turtle made me smile because it reminded me of a story about my son Josh was maybe 3 years old, so this is maybe 9 years ago or so, 10 years, something like that. And we were on vacation in Hawaii with my parents and my brother, and we went snorkeling. And of course, my kids were real little. Josh was 3, Callie was 5, and so we were, snorkeling in chest-deep water. It wasn't anything super fantastic or special, but there was plenty of stuff in that first 5 feet of water. And so I've got Josh right here, and I'm kind of peeking down and looking and saying, all right, there's an eel and there's some fish, and along lumbers this big sea turtle. And Josh is not real keen on being in the water. Even though it's Hawaii, the water was a little bit chilly, and he was done. He was very done. And I thought, Josh, this sea turtle is going to swim like a foot in front of us. It's coming. I was like, buddy, we got to go underwater and check this thing. He's like, I don't want to see the sea turtle. And I was like, Josh, this doesn't happen very often. The sea turtle's going to be right here in just a second. He's like, I don't care. I don't want to see. I'm cold. I want to go in. I was like, we'll go in just a minute, buddy. And he's like, I want to go in now. I was like, the sea turtle's coming. We're going to see the sea turtle, so get ready. He's like, I don't want to see the sea turtle. And here it was. I'm not kidding. It was like right here. So if we both went underwater, it would be going right past our goggles. Really cool. And I didn't want him to miss it. So I said, buddy, hold your breath. We're going down. I don't. Popped up, and I was like, all right, we're going in, quick. But we saw the sea turtle. I enjoyed it. I don't think he did very much. In listening to Bruce's children's story and the scripture that Javon read, which tied in so well with it, it's sometimes overwhelming to think about how small we are. I remember hearing that for the first time, that if the earth were the size of a golf ball, and that one star, Canis Majoris, the big dog star, I love that name for that star too, the big dog star. You could fit 4 quadrillion Earths inside of it, or, as Bruce said, you could fill the state of Texas up 2 feet deep with golf balls, and each golf ball is the size of Earth. Have you ever driven across Texas before? It's ridiculously big. I've driven across it many, many times. I have a lot of family in Texas, and if you drive from El Paso in the west all the way out to the Louisiana border, doing about 80 miles an hour, takes you about 16 hours. It's 12 hours just to Dallas-Fort Worth area from El Paso. And then going north to south, I've done that too, from Houston all the way north. It's huge. It is a massive amount of land. And if you think about one of the stars, and the psalmist said, by the breath of his mouth, the heavens were made. God spoke. And these stars came into existence like that. A star big enough to fit 4 quadrillion Earths inside of that one star. When was the last time you went out and looked at a dark night sky? How many stars did you see? An overwhelming amount of stars. So many of them. And yet that is just one star. And it's a little overwhelming to try and picture small little us mattering at all in the grand scheme of things. And yet out of all of creation, out of everything that God made, there's only one creature that he made in his image. Out of the size and the vastness of all of his creation, out of all of the millions of things he created, there is only one thing that he made in his image, and that's you. And so when we look at the size of these things, you can still feel like you matter because you do to God. He made you in his image. The complexity of creation is truly mind-blowing. From the tiniest of cells to the largest galaxies. The complexity of everything, the millions of different creatures. And each one of those creatures has amazing little traits. Some fly, some can glow and cause light to happen. Some carry an electric shock. Some are fast. Some are slow. There's one creature. You've probably seen these. I don't think we have them here in Colorado. But at dusk, they start to come out and they put on a light show. Anybody ever seen a firefly before? Do we have them here? We didn't have them in San Diego where I grew up. I'd come in to visit Texas, and we'd see them in Texas, and I think I remember them in Wisconsin when I was a little boy living there. It's kind of mesmerizing to watch fireflies, isn't it? You could just sit there forever and just watch, like, oh, there's one over there. And we were, a couple years ago, we were at Aaron's grandparents' place up in Pennsylvania, and it was dusk, and the fireflies came out. They live out in the country, and my kids got a little mason jar, and they went out and caught those things, and then they could just sit there and watch them, and they just light up. And they're not just lighting up for a light show, they're communicating with other fireflies. Some things never change. The boy fireflies are flashing their lights, and the girl fireflies are flashing their lights back and forth, just like we do, only it's a little different. Some things are no different in the animal world. So incredible to see. I remember when I was a kid, the idea of creating your own light is kind of mind-blowing. I don't know if anybody ever read the comic strip Calvin and Hobbes. Anybody ever read Calvin and Hobbes? I read it so much, my parents took it away from me. I thought it was hilarious. And I remember there was a cartoon in there, Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin is this little 6-year-old kid, and Hobbes is his stuffed animal tiger that comes to life in his imagination. And they're standing outside, and they see a firefly go by. And you see Calvin in the next shot, he's like, "Urgh." He's like, I don't even know which muscle to flex. He was trying so hard. That's so cool, I want to do that. He's trying so hard to make himself light up like a firefly. Couldn't do it. There are things in nature that are absolutely amazing. The eel, the electric eel, creates its own electricity. I saw some guys trying to touch it to see how tough they were. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. The octopus. Did you know that there are 150 different kinds of octopi? I think that's the plural of octopus, right? 150 different kinds of octopi. They can change colors into different patterns even. Now, we change colors every once in a while. Have you ever been really, really embarrassed? What color do you turn? Red. Isn't that funny? You turn red. For people that are very scared, what color do they turn? White. Blood drains out. That's about the extent of it. An octopus can totally change its color drastically, and it can mimic. There's one called a mimic octopus. Look that one up later. That one's cool. It mimics different creatures and turns their color. Mind-blowing. They can fit into all kinds of different spots. And then God gave them a sort of smoke screen to get away when they're being attacked. If something comes after an octopus, not only does it have jet propulsion to take off and go away, but it drops off some ink. And the ink isn't just a smoke screen so they can't see, it messes with their smell as well. Biologists have watched as a moray eel has gone after an octopus. The octopus sends out the ink and jet propulsions away, and for the next 2 hours, they observed the moray eel just kind of going around drunk almost. It didn't know which way was up or down. It was just kind of lost because of the effect of that ink on the moray eel. And God built this thing just right to be able to survive. I enjoy hearing birds sing, maybe not at 5 in the morning, but when I'm wide awake, I enjoy hearing birds sing. And there is a type of bird in Africa called the bell shrike. And these particular types of birds will sing together, kind of as a group, like a mini choir. And most of the time, it's between two birds, and they know the same song, and sometimes one will cut out, and the other one will fill in the notes that the other one left out. They took 5 of these bell shrikes and observed them in a room, and they put put blankets over the cages so they couldn't see each other, and they started singing. And the 5 different birds started singing together the same song and bringing in different parts, filling in for the different ones as if they were their own quintet. All of them reading the same music and filling in different parts. the ant. The ant is an incredible creature, unless it's in your house. There are so many different kinds and sizes of ants. And we look at them often as a nuisance, a bother, a pest. If you research the complexity of ant life, it'll blow your mind. So ants smell. They use pheromones to smell. And their lives are actually very complex. Different ants have different jobs within their community. In one particular type of ant, they're like on the trash crew. They go and they find stuff that smells like trash, and they throw it out. So one time, biologists went and took the trash pheromone and dabbed it on a healthy ant just to see what they would do. And the trash truck ants went and they found this one healthy ant, but he smelled like trash, so they kept on hauling him out and throwing him out in the trash pile. They had a designated trash pile. And this ant's like, "What are you doing?" And he'd come back down there, and they'd find him again because he smelled like trash, and they'd haul him back out to the trash. Some ants are farmers. They actually farm and bury stuff and let it grow and come back and take it and actually cook down inside of their little nests. They'll chew stuff up, bring it back out, let it dry in the sun. There is a whole world that we never ever see, and it's a minuscule world. And God created the ants to have everything they need to thrive. It blows my mind to think how people could imagine this just accidentally came into being. Logic would make me think there's no possible way that everything that is so complex here in this world just happened on accident. The numbers that Jeff mentioned a minute ago, 65%, I think 65% of people in Colorado are Christian, and only 30% believe in an actual, literal creation. There are so many Christians today that believe in a form of creation called Theistic Evolution, where God kind of started things off and then stepped back and let it go. And this is a very fascinating subject to look at. Maybe we'll have to go over that pretty soon since it's on the same topic. It's a very interesting idea, the idea of theistic evolution, and I believe a dangerous idea when it comes to belief in God. And so many Christians are buying into this idea of theistic or God-originated evolution, and I think we'll have to look at that here pretty soon, because that's a very interesting one to discuss and to study. I just can't imagine at all this amount of complexity in this world just randomly happening. There's no way. There's too much design for there not to be a designer. In the Bible, we see all different kinds of God's creation, especially in the beginning of Genesis. We see all the different things that God made. And we've just gone through a couple of different animals. And for today's Bible study, I wanted to look at a story of one of God's creations, an animal that he made. And this is a story, I haven't preached on this story in a very long time, so I was kind of excited to jump into it. Turn in your Bibles with me to Numbers chapter 22. Numbers, the 22nd chapter, early on in the Old Testament. And we're going to look at a man named Balaam. Balaam is a very interesting character. A very unique thing happens to Balaam. Balaam was known as someone who was a prophet. We see this by the people that he deals with locally, that they know that what he says, the people he blesses are blessed, the people he curses are cursed. Somehow, Balaam has a connection with a very powerful God. And in verse 1 of chapter 22, it says, "Then the children of Israel moved and camped in the plains of Moab on the side of the Jordan across from Jericho. Now Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, and Moab was exceedingly afraid of the people because they were many. And Moab was sick with dread because of the children of Israel." So you have to picture these people. God had promised the children of Israel a land flowing with milk and honey. We talked a little bit about this in Youth Sabbath School this morning. He promised them a land flowing with milk and honey, which is a very unique way to describe a land, right? Flowing with milk and honey. You've never seen a real estate ad where there's a house and it describes the real estate as like, oh, farmland, and it's got a pond, and it's basically a land flowing with milk and honey. I don't think any realtor has ever listed property saying that the land is flowing with milk and honey. Why would they say that? I may have told you this story before. This is one of the cooler things that I've seen. I was in Istanbul, Turkey, and I was with Dr. Michael Hazel. This is probably 12, 13 years ago. And in Istanbul, there is a old horse racing track, kind of like, think Ben-Hur, the movie Ben-Hur. And there's they have the whole setup there for racing, and there is what's the Washington Monument called? What's that? An obelisk. There's an obelisk there right at the racetrack that's from Egypt. And Dr. Hazel was saying that this obelisk was from around the time of when Moses would have been in Egypt, and that he would have seen this obelisk, which was really cool. And he said, I want you to look at the top of this obelisk. And at the top of the obelisk was a priest kneeling down, and he had 2 cups making an offering to the Egyptian god. And he said, do you know what's in those cups? And we're like, no, what's in the cups? He said, inside the cups, the best offering they would give to their gods was milk and honey. And so when God told Moses to tell the Israelites that he's going to free them and he's going to give them a land full of milk and honey, what God was saying is, I'm going to give you a rich land. I will bless you. It's going to be better than anything you can imagine. The Egyptians, this is the best offering that they can give to their gods. I'm going to give you a land full of this. The blessings that I'm going to give you are going to overwhelm you. It's going to be a good place. And so they're on their way, and they're going through this guy's area, through Moab. Now, how many people were the Israelites? Probably a lot. Probably a lot. There's all kinds of speculation, but if you have a group of people living for 400 years in one area, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. There's a couple million. And they're all moving. And they're all becoming new neighbors to people who don't have that many people in their villages. That would be a little overwhelming, right? So Balak is like, these people are just going to overtake us just like they have the other guys. What do we do? Someone says, well, we need to talk to Balaam. Balaam can go out and curse them for us. That way they can't hurt us. Because Balaam, I think he can do that. I think he's got the right connections to help us out here. So they send an entourage over to Balaam. And they explain, see, they cover the face of the earth and are settling next to me. Verse 6, therefore, please come out and curse these people for me, for they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I should be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he who you curse is cursed. So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with a diviner's fee in their hand, and they came to Balaam and spoke to him the words of Balak. So they bring Balaam a bunch of money as well. Verse 8, and Balaam says, stay here tonight. I will go and talk to the Lord and do what the Lord speaks to me. So the princes of Moab stayed with Balaam. Now this is a good example of what to do when you come up with a situation in life where you're not sure which way to turn. In this, Balaam does exactly the right thing. When you're not sure if you should go right or left with a choice in life, the best place you can go for advice is God. Ask God which way you should go and what will be the best decision that you can make. Life is full of decisions. Oftentimes, we're not sure which one is best. Ask God. He promises to give us wisdom in all of these things. So Balaam said to God, verse 10, Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent me, saying, look, the people have come out of Egypt. And verse 12, God says to Balaam, you shall not go with them, you shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. God has this whole plan. He's already been talking to Moses. He's heard the cry of the Israelites in Egypt. God has this whole plan for the Israelites to save them and take them out of here. This is kind of a big project of God's. He's been working on this a while. He was working with Moses, and Moses says, I can't do it, I can't talk. And God says to Moses, Moses, who made your mouth? Okay, yeah, you made. I pick somebody else. So God's been working on Moses. He's been working and getting the Israelites. He's gone through the whole plagues of Egypt. God has got a lot invested in this project. God's not going to call Balaam to go and curse the people who he has blessed. That doesn't make any sense at all. And he says to him, Balaam, don't you go. These are blessed people. So Balaam rose in the morning, verse 13. He says, go back to your land. The Lord has refused to give me permission to go with you. So they went back and forth, and they came back to Balaam, and they said, Balaam, please. And Balaam says, well, I'll go and ask God again if we can do this. God had already given the answer, right? Why would he go back again? Well, maybe Balaam wanted a little extra spending money. So he says to him, well, I'll ask God again. God gives Balaam a unique answer. He says, well, I already told you no, but if you insist, go ahead, but you're only going to say the words that I tell you to say. Clearly, though, God doesn't want him to go with these people. He has no intention of cursing his own people. Here's where the story gets interesting. And it says, God was a little upset with Balaam for pushing this. And it says, God's anger was aroused because he went. Verse 22. And the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as an adversary against him. And he was riding his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. My friends, in our lives, I hope that none of us are ever said to be adversaries against God. Clearly, it is possible to be an adversary against God. That is ground I never, ever want to walk on. The ground I want to walk on is the ground that God puts me on and blesses. I never, ever want to feel or to be on ground that puts me as an adversary against God. So off he goes with his donkey. Verse 23, now the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his sword drawn in his hand. And the donkey turned aside out of the way and went into the field. So Balaam struck the donkey and turned her back to the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in the narrow path between the vineyards with a wall on this side and a wall on that side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed herself against the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her again. Verse 26, then the angel of the Lord went further and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn neither to the right or to the left. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. So Balaam's anger was aroused, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Wow. Have you ever been frustrated with an animal before? It happens, doesn't it? Back at my old church, we had the big program called Walk Through Bethlehem every Christmas. And part of my responsibilities were picking up all these goats and sheep for our program. We had about 5,000 people a year that would come through in December and see this stuff. And we picked up a donkey, too. And it was a pretty nice donkey. I'd haul them all in a trailer. We had a whole pen for them at church. And I fed them there every day. And we'd haul them up for the program. And this donkey was great. The donkey station was in the manger area where Mary and Joseph and Jesus were at. And there was a donkey eating hay right behind him. It was a really nice stop in the program. Well, one day, I was trying to bring the donkey up before all the programs started, and this donkey just sat down. And I was like, hey, look, donkey, we got to go. I got sheep and goats to bring up. We got the program starting. Everybody's dressed up. We'd have like 100 volunteers every night for this program. And this donkey's just sitting there like a dog, like rear end on the ground, legs down like this, not going anywhere. I was like, all right, donkey, let's try it. So I grabbed the rope because it was on the head, right? And I was like, all right, let's go, donkey. I tried pulling. It was like pulling a brick wall. He wasn't going anywhere. So I gave it everything I had, and I was trying to pull this donkey, and it was not happening. It was kind of embarrassing how little happened when I would try and pull this thing. So I called for a couple of my buddies at church. I said, hey, guys, I need some help moving this donkey. So we got 3 grown men on the rope and 2 grown men on its backside. And we couldn't move this donkey. Finally, someone found an apple, and the donkey's like, yeah, get up for an apple. And off we went. It was that easy. But sometimes it's easy to get frustrated with animals when they don't do what you want. Here, Balaam, he's trying to go here. He's a little probably guilty for what he's doing. He's trying to get there as fast as he can, and this stupid donkey won't go where he's supposed to go. Takes off in a field. Come on. He hits the donkey with a staff. Goes in between 2 places. He even crushes his ankle. I wonder how bad the injury was. mean, he just squishes this poor guy's ankle. His foot's killing him. The donkey's not doing this. The donkey never does this. And he gets up and beats this donkey again. Could not get this donkey to go where he wanted it to. Now, this is kind of cool. This is verse 28. And this is a very, very unique story in the Bible for how this works. It says, then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey. Now, here's what didn't happen, and this is very, very important. God did not speak through the donkey. The Bible says he opened the mouth of this donkey. And the conversation we see happening between Balaam and the donkey is from the donkey's perspective. God opens the mouth of the donkey and lets the donkey vent a little bit and tell its perspective as if it was used to thinking and talking. Listen to this. This is mind-blowing. The Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, what have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? And Balaam, verse 29, just right off the bat, starts talking back to the donkey. And Balaam said to the donkey, because you have abused me, I wish there was a sword in my hand, for right now I would kill you. This guy's lost his mind. His 2 servants are like, what is happening here? The donkey's talking. He's talking back to the donkey. He's threatening the donkey. Threatened the donkey. He just beat the tar out of the donkey. Now he says, if I had a sword, I'd kill you. This is just a mind-blowing scenario. Balaam is so angry. He's having a fight with a donkey. Verse 30, so the donkey said to Balaam. Wouldn't it be funny if someone was reading the Bible for the first time and this is the verse they came to? So the donkey said to Balaam, am I not your donkey on which you have ridden ever since I became yours to this day? Was I ever disposed to do this to you? And he said, no. Isn't this funny? The donkey's like breaking down logic. Like, look, man, we've been friends. I've carried you everywhere. Have I ever done this to you before? And Balaam's like, well, no, I guess not. This is such a cool story. And the Lord opened Balaam's eyes now. And he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand. And he bowed his head and fell flat on his face. And the angel of the Lord said to him, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to stand against you because your way is perverse before me. Man, that's another thing you never want to hear. I never ever want to hear that my way is perverse before God. Clearly, there are things and decisions that God sees as perverse. And friends, that is why it is so important that we always walk within God's guidance and will in our lives. If we love Jesus, we never want to be seen as doing perverse things that hurt him. Your ways are perverse before me. Verse 33, it says, the donkey saw me and turned aside from me those 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely I would have also killed you by now and let her live. You wonder if the donkey's just back there like, see, I told you. You're beating me. I'm saving your life. There's so many cool parts about this story. I wish I could have seen it. Surely I would have killed you and let her live. And Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, verse 34, I have sinned, for I did not know that you stood in the way against me. There's a lot of heavy pieces of this story. He's going a direction in life, and he says he doesn't know that he's working against God. I think there are times in human existence where we can be deceived and think we're doing something right, when in actuality, we are doing something wrong and getting in the way of God's work instead of helping it. And that's never an easy place to be, to see our own mistakes. Because oftentimes we rationalize what we're doing and why we're doing it, right? And yet I think sometimes it's possible for us to get in God's way and be in the wrong even though we think we're in the right. So how do we fix that? How do we avoid being in the wrong, doing perverse things, standing in God's way, getting in his way of working with people? How do we avoid these situations? I think the only way to be able to do that is to compare everything that we do with God's word. Is the decision I'm making, is the life I'm living, is how I treat other people how God would treat other people? Is what I'm doing in life, does that honor God? Or is that getting in the way of him working with other people? We can rationalize all kinds of different things. Balaam, for sure, was rationalizing going and hanging out with Balak. They had tons of money. They were like, oh, come on, you can do this. You're our neighbor. You got to help us out. And Balak's like, well, yeah, I guess I could. He rationalized this trip, didn't he? And yet he found himself in opposition to God. May none of us ever find ourselves in opposition to what God wants in our lives. That takes a healthy bit of introspection on our parts, doesn't it? And humility to stop and say, God, if there's anything in my life, reroute me, fix me, change me, so that we don't stand in God's way. This donkey is an interesting part of this story. God created this donkey. It's not the most elaborate or elegant of creations. In fact, the name of this donkey is often used to insult people. It's not the most glamorous or the most beautiful creature. And yet God used that donkey, didn't he? He used that donkey. There's a song by a guy named Don Francisco. I don't know if anybody ever heard the song about Balaam. I almost brought my guitar and sang it for you today because it's a really fun song about Balaam, maybe someday. But God created this animal and used this animal to make sure the human he was using was doing the right thing. God's creation is unbelievable. And this, along with the story of Adam and Eve in the garden when the serpent talks to Eve, I've always found that mind-blowing because Eve talks right back as if it's a normal thing. That's always blown my mind. When we get to heaven, is it going to be like that? When a bird flies by us in heaven, is it going to be like, hey, have a nice day? I don't know. God clearly has used animals in the past. His creation is so incredible. So many good lessons in the story of Balaam. But one of the biggest, I think, is to the very first thing, and he did this right, was to go to God with these decisions. And hopefully in our existence, we won't need a donkey to turn us around and to point us in the right direction. Direction is huge in our lives. And in nature, God has given specific creatures an incredible ability to find out their direction and where they're going. There are monarch butterflies that go back and forth between Mexico and Canada. Butterflies. I mean, they don't even have the strongest wings. And they travel thousands of miles, and they know exactly where to go, the exact valley where they're supposed to go, and they all meet up there. Hummingbirds will go across the Gulf of Mexico. They amp up on sugar before they go, right? And it's really cool. Some of the coastal towns down in Texas will put out thousands of hummingbird feeders right around migration time. It's really cool. And just thousands of hummingbirds come by, stop, sugar all up so they have the energy to go across, and they fly across the whole Gulf of Mexico. Migrating whales figure out where to go. Migrating birds, homing pigeons can figure out exact directions. People used to use those for kind of telephones and passing messages. Bees, the navigation of a little bumblebee. They use the placement of where the sun is to navigate. One of the neat ones is a salmon. Now, a lot of people are like, salmon, I like that on my plate. That's what we think of salmon a lot of times. At a restaurant, people eat salmon all the time. A salmon actually has incredible navigating skills that God gave it to be able to find out exactly where it needs to go. Now, salmon come down the streams up in Alaska, Norway, different places like that, high in the northern hemisphere, and they go down their stream where they begin, and they head out to the open ocean. Now, if you've ever been along the coast of, let's pick Alaska right now, a lot of the coastline of Alaska looks the same. And if you go up, you'll find stream after stream after stream after river after stream, and these fish come down and go out into the ocean, swim out in the open ocean, and as part of their life cycle, these salmon are able to come back to the exact stream where they originally came from. There's no way I could do that. There's no way. And yet, God gave the salmon the ability to navigate through the open ocean through the sense of smell, and scientists believe that they use the magnetic force of the earth to help navigate where they need to go to get right back to their home stream. A simple fish. And God gave it what it needs to navigate to get to where it needs to go. Friends, God has a destination for you and me. This world is not our home. God has so much more planned for you and me. And just like with the salmon, how God gives it the ability and the direction it needs to get where it needs to go, God has given you and I direction in this life to get where we need to go. And that direction comes from the Word of God and His plan for you and me. This is not our final destination. We are on a journey as well, just like the salmon. And God is drawing us closer and closer to home. And He has given us everything that we need to make it home. We just need to follow His directions and guidance in our lives. This week, I want to challenge you to look around. As you're driving down the road, maybe if you get up early like Lee does, around sunrise, take a look around and see, listen to the birds, look at the squirrels in the trees. If you're lucky, you'll see a bald eagle or something like that. And as you see these incredible creations all around us, I hope you're reminded of what a powerful and amazing God you serve. And if He's that powerful to make all that stuff, He is powerful enough to save us from this world and to take us to a place where none of this stuff that He created ever dies again. Flowers will never wilt again. Nothing will ever die in the place where He's preparing for us. And He is powerful enough to actually make that happen. And He's planning on you and me being there. I invite our worship team to come up. We're going to sing a closing song. And the song is, I Sing the Mighty Power of God. What an incredible God we serve. And we see the evidence of it all around us. I hope you're inspired as you look around and see the incredible creations that you see in your world. In fact, you don't have to look any farther than the person next to you to see an incredible creation that God made. Let's stand together and sing, I Sing the Mighty Power of God.